Good evening, Mr. Bond. The world as we knew it has been discontinued.
Are you referring to the thing that's just occurred in Lebanon?
No, I'm just being kind of sarcastic. A general sweeping statement.
Well, it is somewhat true. The the video that I'm making right now called "The God of Technocracy."
Yeah.
I think Steiner was onto something. He stated in the. I'll get the actual quote here. This is from The Origins of Evil. This is round about 1916, 1917. Only small within the small part of the third millennia. Oh no, pardon me. Only a small part of the third millennia will pass when the incarnation of Ahriman will occur in the West. So
Yeah.
Ahriman is the machine. It is the god of technocracy. You know, obviously it goes by many names, but this is what they've been working towards essentially.
Well, the Homo Deus, the crossover thing, is that seems to be. Does that tie in with the Ahrimanic concept?
Yeah,
that it's a hybrid.
Entirely. Yeah, it's essentially the form, the fulfillment rather of the Luciferian rebellious spirit that sought to transcend beyond the bounds of man himself.
Yes.
So that's ultimately what they're desirous of. There was something else I was checking out too. If I can find it, put it in my my notes.
Rebellious spirit.
Oh yeah, this is also, I believe this is something that's just, it's within the psyche of man. I don't think this isn't necessarily an entity per se.
Yeah.
But I think that's, obviously it doesn't succeed, but the reason for this psychic pull, this desire to bring about what ultimately is the impossible transcendence of man, some sort of other state, a super sensible state, you know, a biodigital state. I think it's to bring about a great reset. That's what maintains the revolutions of the wheel. The dualism itself is between the rebel and God. Between the nature of man, between the natural and the unnatural, the machine, the cold, the Ahrimanic or Luciferian. That's what. Oh yes, that was it. Have you ever seen that silent film from 1927 called Metropolis?
No, I don't think so, but it's something very familiar. Is there an image from that of a rocket crashing into a moon?
No, that's a different one. That's from, I believe, like 13 years back or so.
Okay.
But yes, it's similar to that in sort of a style. It's from that same period. But
okay,
I'll send you it over. Yeah, here we go. This is exactly about what we are discussing right now, and everything that's essentially going on.
Which you can kind of feel it now, can't you? Like that we're in the thick of something. Like things are getting very syrupy. Like, do you find that?
Oh, certainly, yeah. You're essentially in the final years of history. This is the end of history, as Steiner stated, and there's a few others that stated it as well. You're going into a new epoch. I think these grander epochs, these grander cycles of civilization, I think they occur within, if you were to look at the zodiacal wheel, every quarter. So civilization, writing, the Bronze Age, all of that, again, according to official history, that began in the age of Taurus. which is around about 4000 BC or so. It's now ending around about in the age of Aquarius, which would be, I think it's like 3000, 4000 AD. So you've got that general arc. I think that's the sort of arc that we're looking at. Of course, you have the 7 millennia as well. That idea. I think there's something to that too.
And this general concept of the marriage between the microchip and our semiconductor with the biological cell. Like, can we speak a little bit about that? Like the human cells, for example, or animal biological cells are sort of things that have their own magnetic or electrical components, microelectrical, shall we say, because there's life and vibration, and they're probably at the atomic level, or the level of, help me out here, Silas, at the level of molecules.
Yeah, the molecular level, yeah.
Yeah, so there's attraction, and there's stuff rotating around the nucleus, and there's processes that are happening at this biological cellular level. So now we have this concept where there's this marriage or crossover between semiconductor, microchip, and frequencies on the electromagnetic spectrum, which we are led to believe can impact, influence, direct, engineer the biological. So if this, and it seems to be the case. I mean, I'm not so well versed on it, I freely admit. But like, from the people I've been listening to, including Sabrina Wallace there, she's quite a lot of, to quote what she says, she spent 2 years trying to prove herself wrong. And she hasn't been able to do that. And a lot of the subject areas that she speaks about are kind of accepted mainstream science, if not very niche aspects of science that are probably not very well known about. They're not necessarily in the public narrative domain, so, but very much so she's talking about the capacity to influence biological processes, a digital biological crossover or convergence, to use her term, biodigital convergence. And this, I think, is something you spoke about way back with the nanopatch kind of concept in around. So is this? Are we here? Is this? The bus has arrived. Like, is this the show? Like, this seems to be.
This is the marriage between what the alchemists were dreaming of. Of course, that alchemy itself goes back to Kabbalah. Essentially, it all centers around this worship, this rather exotic worship of the Ahrimanic, the Yahweh, this Lord of the earth deity, this entity of time, this entity of the cold, the calculated, the binary, that which seeks to mechanize man, to collectivize his psyche, to almost, to bring him into that transcendent state, but it's a sort of regressive state of transcendence. So it goes beyond the original intent of God for man, and it takes it from that prototypical state to this transhumanist state, if you will. But you even see, for example, the microchips, semiconductors, all of this. The cell, the voltaic cell, which is, of course, it has religious connotations. That's where the term cell comes from. It's a small room or a chamber within a monastery.
Yes.
And you see within the sigils, for example, let's look at the Lesser Keys of Solomon. You see those sigils for pertaining to each deity or each hellish or infernal principality, and how to control them, how to control the energy of them, the archetype of them, so that they may work for you within the bounds of that sigil, and your intent as the magician, you have the sort of exact same layout on these microchips. It's the same thing. And you have scrying mirrors. Again, the same thing. I think there's something to that too. And you see the way that social media, of course, the scrying mirror, the screens, the blue light screens, the semiconductors, the microchips, all of this, the look at the effect that it's had on the human psyche.
Yeah.
It's really brought us into, dare I say, a mechanistic way of thinking, to a point now where people were readily and willingly lining up to take, leaps of faith into the market and maelstrom that was quote quote science and or the marriage, the unholy marriage between quote quote science and the political salesman class. So I think there's something to all of this. It seems to me to be the marriage of, I mean, there's no other way of describing it. Magic with a K at the end, and the Kabbalistic eschaton, and essentially modern science, and the technoist scientistic perception that Ahriman or Yaldabaoth, or whatever term we want to use, seeks to foist onto humanity. That's what it appears to be to me.
Yeah, I have an image like of a vast battlefield where there's, mountains and lakes, and it's huge, 100 miles across, and there's all these armies are in various stages of conflict and battle, and suddenly a quagmire appears in this middle of this landscape, like a whirlpool of, mud and sand, and it pulls the entire 100-mile wide battlefield down into this spinning vortex of bog, and it melts the entire scene, and everything is pulled in. It kind of, this seismic huge force arrives, which just obliterates, as Mike Tyson said memorably, everybody has plans until they get hit. This thing just hits, and it's a tsunami. It's a total game changer. A total paradigm shift. It upsets the apple cart in just a complete way, and it will call for an absolute, people will have to sit down and renumerate reality, their own consciousness, what society means, what living means, what hope means, what fear means. The whole thing is going to be completely changed, it would seem. And it would seem that it's going to be very difficult for any of us, if not impossible, not to be affected by it on so many levels.
Oh, we're already affected by it. I mean, the reason that they're reshaping society, they're engaged so fervently in social engineering, is because they have to essentially put into place contingency plans, mitigative strategies of curtailing the psycho-spiritual negative effects it will have, not just within, given, Western societies or particular societies, but across the entire landscape, the psychic landscape of the species. So what we see them doing right now is them preparing the ground for this Ahrimanic incarnation, this Ahrimanic deception, this vast mechanization, inventorization of man, not just man of the world as well. And like the Tower of Babel, eventually they want to bring us into a territory, a new and uncharted frontier, or at least uncharted since their last attempt at this, perhaps, that we all think with one mind. And you see that within that 1927 movie Metropolis, where the way it's portrayed the machine and all of the various uniform workers. They're all working tirelessly. They regimented. They don't. They you see the first batch of sacrificees, or those to be sacrificed, the victims. You see them being chucked into the fiery mouth of Moloch. This is the machine, right? And they're unwilling to go in. But then the next batch are the workers, and they're all wearing black, all uniformed, standard clothing, and they're all walking in rank in a regimented way and just falling right in to it. That's exactly what we saw through that event in 2020, beginning, I think it was December 14th, 2020. Which, funnily enough, by the way, the onset of that needlecraft agenda, December 14th, 2020, was the midpoint between the 66 week, I think it was, 66 weeks between the Aleph and Tav eclipses. Just interestingly, so obviously it was 33 weeks in between it. I merely state that just as a sort of strange coincidence, I guess, but yeah, it's exactly what we saw during that time period. And that itself, I think that was the primary reason, amongst other reasons, of course. But that was one of the primary reasons for it, which was to firstly gauge the quote-quote dumbing down process of the populace. And by that, I mean how standardized their thinking was, how regimented they are, how pliable they are and compliant to tyrannical whims. And I think they were gauging that there. And of course, they were further installing and inculcating that regimented mentality within the populace as well, which of course is something the Ahrimanic regime is contingent upon. It needs that. It needs that for the biodigital convergence. I mean, that's what it's ultimately coming down to. But first, before you merge man with the machine, you have to turn man into a machine in his thinking.
Yeah.
So the mind must be made fertile for the biodigital tentacles to then latch onto.
Well, I suppose if the masses are viewing reality through that prism, through this new prism of technology, after a generation or so, ultimately the masses then, to use your kind of language, their mind becomes fertile for that crossover, because that's how they see the world now. They view the world through the tint of those glasses, or through that prism. So without even a convergence, their consciousness is kind of infected by it, and like all of us, it's shaped by it, so to speak. So, we don't kind of remember the old way of thinking. It's kind of, we've already are aligned with this motion. You know what I mean? Our minds think and see in this way increasingly,
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it's a gradual thing. It's occurred gradually. And it's something that's done by osmosis, as opposed to, of course, you have major crises as well that are bringing those are great leap forwards within the agenda. But within the periods between these massive crises, there is respite. But even within the states of respite, there is that continual humming, that of nudging, of gradually bringing people through osmosis into this particular pattern of thinking, into this particular comportment. So everything that we see is to bring us to this final state. The final state, by the way, is essentially the self-extermination of the species.
Yeah.
Man's biology, the way he thinks, all of it, there's absolutely no way it could survive the absolute violent transition that you would require. Even if they're doing it gradually now, but you would have to eventually, once you want that biodigital convergence, there has to be a violent restructuring of man's psyche, and I don't think man could survive that. The incompetence of this clique itself, I don't think they have the competence to pull it off. But of course,
let me play devil's advocate with that point just for a second and say that, it's like, you could have an incompetent group who are opening the doors for the tsunami wave to flood through. And again, I'm being devil's advocate with the point, but they may not necessarily need to be competent in the sense that they just need to open the door. That the force itself, it will be so overwhelming that they've unleashed the forces of chaos.
Well, that's what I'm terrified of. That it's a Roko's basilisk type scenario where they merely have to open. They have to permit
the key.
They are the key to allow the threshold between this world and perhaps another one to open. Figuratively speaking. And Pandora's box is unleashed. And once that which is in the box is unleashed, the evil is unleashed, there's no putting it back in the box.
Yeah.
It's
well, he who guides the wheel with care.
Yeah.
Isn't it what he doesn't necessarily, he just has to guide it, he just has to open it.
He who is
and get
beyond sorry man, continue.
No, sorry. But the point being, he doesn't have to be the engineer, he just has to kind of that rotos opera tenet translation, just to guide it, open it, let it release the hounds, and off it goes. And the point being that they don't have to necessarily perhaps engineer it or be that competent, actually.
Yes, and remember as well, he is without knowledge of good or evil. So it's exactly what we see with our own. I say our own, but the individuals that are in charge of the world at present. They are nihilists, totally nihilistic. But within that Metropolis film, that silent film from the 1920s, 1927 to be specific, we see the mechanistic Sophia, or rather the mechanistic Maria, and she is engaged in a sort of almost Shivaite dance, the dance that Shiva would do to maintain the energy of the cosmos. I believe while standing on a demon. I think it's Mara. And she does the same thing, and then she takes on the sort of similitude of the Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. Essentially, she is the eighth point that sits upon the seven heads of the monster. It's probably something astronomically to do with the Pleiades or the Seven Sisters, with obviously the eighth point being a sort of solar, a solar symbol. Of course, we have that with Yaldabaoth as well. But interestingly, all of the clique, all of the rich and wealthy, they all, there's a scene where they're all, they've got their right hand up and they're just running towards this mother of harlots, right? And praise and reverence of it. And it's exactly what you see now. If, of course, that mother of harlots is the symbol of this mechanistic Ahrimanic deception. where they seek total uniformity, total predictability and efficiency.
Yeah.
But the problem is there is more to life than mere efficiency. There's more to life than power. There's more to life than all of these sort of numerical, quantifiable standards of wealth. And that is what is at stake. And it's I mean, you can see it within the political regimes of the West. They've basically turned into economies. That's it. You've got governments that don't really care about their own people. Of course, that's by design, but they don't care about their own people. They're fine with having open borders. And the excuse that they give is, well, it's good for the economy. But the issue is, of course, there's more to a country than its economy. And if a country is merely a geographical expanse that where transactions take place, then you destroy all of the mystical elements that go along with the country, which, engender patriotism, which provide us a reason to have a country, a reason to live, a purpose. Right? So if you destroy all of that, if you destroy that same mystical quality in human life and attempt to, coldly define it in really constricting terms, Ahrimanic terms, then you also destroy that purpose for people to live as well.
But again, to play the devil's advocate on that point, I wonder lately if there's not going to be a sort of a counter movement in the culture where people sort of instinctively are aware that there are compressive forces around them and that are threatening their kind of essential core human essence or values, and that somehow they'll band together in a defiant, and not necessarily a kind of paramilitary rebellion as such, but perhaps some sort of a movement of soul, if you will, a soul rebellion where it's they'll sense the machine around them and they'll band together as brothers and sisters, perhaps in some manner, like some sort of a, I don't know how to describe it, but like a reawakening of togetherness, or perhaps a reawakening of nation in the true sense. We are a nation now. We are the nation of humanity, in defiance of this machine. We are not the machine, and that some sort of a momentum might occur. Perhaps sometimes I think I see little glimpses of it, even in the workforce I'm in at the moment. There's many different countries and nationalities, and there just seems to be this kind of I want to say a brotherhood, even though there's female, sisterhood too, but it just seems to be a kind of and I'd wondered if it was a curiosity to pick particular job I'm on, or is it representative of, maybe something that's happening. But something I wanted to ask you, this a little bit outside the boxes, if I may, cut across my own point there, is, and this might sound like a stupid question, right? But how much do you think this entire machine is dependent on electricity or electrical energy?
Extremely. Electrical energy itself, from an esoteric point of view, is the Y principle. You can see the pathway of electricity takes the same path as, for example, the tree. Any sort of energetic path takes the same path as what's called the Lichtenberg pattern. This is entirely what they're attempting to capture within, for example, silica and everything else that goes into a microchip, semiconductor. All of the implants that they seek eventually, the biodigital reformation of man, all of that is based upon electricity. That's another reason why it's so, easily countered by external forces, not just cosmic forces such as solar flares and such, but forces even on here on the ground. I think, see, the issue with electricity is it is constantly, to control it is very difficult. Even, for example, with data centers, they have to be kept at a constant. There can't be any fluctuation at all, not just in the temperature, but within the actual constancy of voltage. Any at all will cause loss within the system. So it's, informational loss. If you have informational loss, and your entire system is built on information, and the containment, the centralization of information, the controlling of it, and you have these informational machines which are now human beings. I mean, if you can't maintain that control of the informational system, the data centers, the electricity, the grid, all of this, the system it will die a death overnight because it's so brittle, it's so inflexible. Like, it's not very adaptable.
It seems like the entire like data system and internet and the exchange of information. Ahriman himself, God love him, is actually dependent on electrical power.
Yeah.
Seems obvious to say it, but it's like until you say it, you kind of go, well, is that true? And it would seem to be true that the Achilles heel of the entire apparatus is its capacity to access, avail of, control electrical power, because none of the machine can function without it.
Well, the machine itself is a projection of an illusion.
Okay.
That's exactly what all of these telecommunication or informational systems are. What you see with, for example, on the screens that we see right now, they provide the illusion of movement through essentially, of course, imperceptible to us, obviously the refresh rate of the pixels on the screen, which are just small, again, cells of light that are acting in unison, that provide that illusion.
Yes.
If half of the cells on the screen go, then the illusion breaks. Hell, if even a quarter of the cells go, the illusion breaks. Becomes uncomfortable, annoying, really. You don't use the screen. It's the same thing with the data centers. They're like pixels upon the illusion of this system, the screen of illusion of this system.
And following on from the point, do you think it's worth kind of inquiring as to the possibility that some aspect of the screen, this movement toward green energy in inverted commas, solar panels or windmills or whatever you have in yourself, battery cars, is a kind of stealth way to proxy control electrical power?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. That's exactly the reason for it. And as well, I mean, you even see it with electric cars. Lithium. The reason they're using lithium, all of these various rare minerals, rare earth minerals like cobalt as well, is, well, firstly, I mean, you need to use them in some of these electric cars. Just have to use. It has to use those rare earth minerals within its mechanisms. What we see as well with solar, photovoltaic cells that make up solar panels, is that they also have to go through a very intense process, which creates a lot of toxic waste. So again, it's sort of set up to be monopolized by large companies.
Yeah.
And I think partly that's by design, and partly that's just convenient for them. It's a sort of happy accident that it's turned out that way. But yes, absolutely, it allows them to monopolize the electrical grid. It allows them to monopolize total control of it.
Yeah.
I was discussing yesterday with the guys that even everything that they do is to maintain the illusion of scarcity. To
Yes.
maintain, and of course that maintains the illusion of the system and the hierarchy which underpins it. So the reason one can't just buy a plot of land and establish a 7-bedroom house on it if they have the corresponding aptitudes in construction to do so is because of planning permission and the bureaucratic red tape that surrounds it. So again, it's the obstacles that are constantly put in the way of people, and that's what this system seeks to do. The obstacles are like the pen, the corralment, the funnel, if you will, that corrals the cattle into the pen. That's what bureaucracy acts like. But the problem is, too much bureaucracy essentially constricts and communicates to the herd that there's no way out.
Yes.
You always have to have a source of release valve, a visible release valve that's visible to the herd, that they see, well, there's a way, I can get out that way, and perhaps it's an illusion itself. But this is something Sun Tzu stated. Individuals that are on desperate ground, that have no other way, retreat is no option, they will fight 10 times harder.
Yeah.
Of course, they'll inflict casualties upon your army if you face them at a greater degree than if, per se, you gave them an outlet, a way to exfiltrate from the battlefield.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's an illusion itself. You allow them to exfiltrate so far away from the battlefield, then you spring an ambush on them or something. But anyway, the point being, I think this system, the bureaucracy is getting to such a degree that people are beginning to become claustrophobic of it. I think, and hopefully something triggers. We can only hope.
Yeah. I dare say it will. I mean, all forces exist in balance at some point. So I dare say the human spirit will react at some point in time, and it'll sense the threat, like the herd of horses sense the tiger or whatever. It's like an instinctive sense of threat. Do you know what I mean? So that they'll react and circle the wagon, so to speak. But how that will manifest remains to be seen. But like I caused lately to work in power station, electrical power station, and it just struck me, like, the raw material to get the turbine spinning, the main turbine in the power station, is like a steam turbine, or actually we're using aircraft engines at the moment. But like for those turbines to turn, you need to either burn coal or oil or kerosene. So you're taking the raw material to make your electricity is coming out of Mother Earth. But it's the compressed, material from destroyed worlds, if you will. Do you know what I mean? Like oil, for example, or coal. It's compressed organic matter that's been. But it seems then it's also finite, But then perhaps you could say, well, maybe not the case with nuclear energy, which might give you indefinite. But even still, you're reliant on uranium, or you're reliant on sort of mineral resources to, get the reaction going or whatever that come from Mother Earth. So it just seems to be sort of ironic kind of in a sense that the creation that is the world ends up providing the raw fuel to create this dominant class, this ascendant dark masters, have sort of perverted this raw energy, what was it? Is it Prometheus, the handling of the flame from the gods to man? Is it? I think.
Yes.
So this is the flame has been handed over, and it was to be used. It could be used for the betterment of man or his enslavement or destruction. It's entirely at the whim of the beholder. But it's one question I wanted to ask you. Do you think that we've been here before, back in the eons, that there's nothing new in a sense here?
I think this is eternal. Obviously, I have no way to prove that, but I think this cycle is eternal. I think the world has probably always been here. I don't even think you could put an age onto the world, how old this process is. I think it's largely a psychic process, and I think it's nature's way, psychically, of maintaining homeostasis. So I think what we're going through right now is the negating principle within the negative feedback loop, which ensures that we do not diverge. We don't diverge from the natural order of things. So it's a sort of fail-safe. So we don't transcend, so it's like the moth to the flame.
Yeah.
The moth to the flame is drawn to the flame. I don't know why. Perhaps it believes, it provides it pleasure on the journey to the flame. Perhaps the flame itself is pleasurable once it's reached by the moth. Who knows? But like that, once we reach that flame itself, like Icarus, we immolate. We believe we can control it. We can't. We destroy ourselves. And you brought Prometheus. Fantastic example. Prometheus takes the fire from the gods, from Mount Olympus, steals it. He's a titan. And he provides it to man, who is in darkness, who is inanimate. So that fire, of course, metaphorically, is the spark of...
the light.
Yeah, the light, the metaphysical spark.
And the Masonic light, the Luciferic light, perhaps, no?
Absolutely, yes. So prior that we were in darkness, we were the blind ones. And then the light came forth, it descended down into the sort of shadowy recesses that was our inanimate psyche, and brought it animation. However, what happened to Prometheus? Well, if memory serves me correctly, he was chained to a mountain. I forget what, Mount Parnassus, I believe it might have been. And Zeus punished him by sending forth an eagle, which would eat Prometheus, disembowel him essentially, and put him through all that suffering and pain, and eat him. And after it was finished with its feast and Prometheus died, he would regenerate and he would revive, all only to go through the thing once more. So Prometheus is us, essentially.
Yeah.
It is us who seek to be like the gods. And in our folly, we consistently put ourselves through this sort of self-destructive process. And the self-destructive process is what regenerates, revivifies our state, only to then do it once more because of, I don't know, some form of amnesia that we seem to have after every grand epoch.
So to kind of summarize that, basically, we get, as they might say in the army, a rush of shit to the brain. And we decide, you know what, let's just use this energy this knowledge to make ourselves into gods. And everyone goes, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go for it. And then we go for it. Then about 3/4 of the way through the process, we realize we've made a complete cock up of the whole thing, and everything's caving in on top of us, and
Well,
are
that's the thing.
waking.
I think only a certain minority of us realize
Oh, okay.
we are the minority, and it's not the cabal, because they
Yeah.
don't have for correction to occur within the psyche. You have to have some sort of corrective impellment or impulse that can either be external or internal. Usually, it's external, right? You can go through, for example, if you're a bully when you're younger, once you bully that one kid who resists you violently and gives you a hiding, essentially, you're then compelled by that corrective action taken by the other kid against you. Your behavior is then compelled to not do that, because of course the hubris that you had, the illusion that you had of your own self and your own physical prowess has been shattered. The cabal the cabal have no corrective measures like that, nothing that grounds them. So they just continue down the path of least resistance. In fact, they do it more fervently than anyone. That's what's quite ironic about this entire thing. They would see us as all sorts of, the degenerates, the useless class. But it is them who are essentially like Dr. Faust, rushing headlong into their own destruction, into the fire. So there is no way there's no reverse gear on this. You can't, because the people who see this for what it is, they largely have no power. So the path of least resistance will always be ventured. It's just it's like a force of nature, and I think it has to occur because, in a sort of subconscious way, nature acts vicariously through us, and we just seem to maintain this constant circular feedback loop that's, of course, negative. Meaning it corrects itself. It's homeostatic.
Like, speaking of technology and Prometheus, where do you, from what you understand, where do you see a facility like CERN playing into the energy thing or into the technology thing, or opening a portal, or what do you think like a facility like that might be engaged in vis-a-vis what you're talking about?
I think what
put
they're
you on the spot.
No, not at all. I think what they're looking to do is essentially like what we were talking about, and you brought up a very a germane point, a point that's connective to what we're discussing, which is, for example, all forms of energy, be it coal, oil, all of this, essentially it is the process or product rather of death.
Decay. Yes.
Of decay.
Yes.
So that is what maintains the homeostatic system. And what do they seek to do? Well, they seek to supplant the and like what we're discussing with these grand epochs, right? The homeostatic system, the negating principle, which maintains and corrects the system, is born of essentially self-destruction, which of course is the product or is tantamount, if not just entirely synonymous, with decay, death, disorder, chaos, so on and so forth, non-cohesion of the form. What they seek to do is the complete opposite of that. They seek to bring about the impossible, which is create a homeostatic system that has no entropy within it, right? That has no potential principle of negation within it. So it does. There's no balancing of it. The balance in itself comes from the lack of analogous elements within it, the lack of the lack of variation within it. Variation from the human actors. So
it's ironically inherently unstable because of the fact that it's got that monolithic singularity about it. It's just totally imbalanced. It's just the seesaw, all the weights on one side of the seesaw as such. So it is a death impulse, kind of, in a sense, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, but they don't see it like that. They see homeostasis as a very one-dimensional concept. So they see it as, well, we cannot have it, they're absolutists in that sense. They can't, well, it's homeostatic, it's also poetic. So therefore, the only benefit that could have to us, to the Cabal, is that we maintain our, we become immortal. We perpetuate our own power. It becomes, a persistent universal force through biodigital means. And they don't understand that entropy is required, I think, within systems of negative feedback.
Or they do, and they're trying to subvert that energy or rewire it or loop it into some other. I remember someone telling me the black magic thing one time was that if you put a curse on someone, like the natural karmic rebound comes back at you from the universe because you wished evil on someone. But the black magic was to root that karmic rebound away from you and onto some other innocent party, so that you kind of walked karmically free. But the point I'm trying to make is that, tying in with your point there, that they're trying to perhaps they do understand there's an exhaust pipe somewhere with all this stuff, but it just has to be rerouted onto something else or someone else or some other perhaps innocent party or whatever, that they're trying to fundamentally re-engineer how things happen, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think that ties in with what they're attempting to do with CERN.
Right.
If we understand even on again, officially with CERN, and it seems to be apparent because we see the statue at the front of CERN, the Shiva, dancing Shiva statue, that is entirely a symbol of cosmic rebalancing and the maintaining of the homeostatic system that is the cosmos. Not just psychically in terms of matter or physically, but of course mentally as well. So I think what they're attempting to do with that is to understand, to quantify the sort of metaphysical principles and operations and mechanisms that underpin some of what would appear to us to be right now the more incomprehensible or quantum elements of
the cube
of the world.
or the square, the Kaaba, the dimensional world. I read the quote today about the Kabbalah. The Kaaba is the square or the cube, and I remember you speaking previously that it was a kind of a metaphorical thing for this reality. That so maybe that's just following from your point there, that the CERN thing is to try to fundamentally understand the mechanical properties in a sort of a, I don't know, perhaps like a metaphysical understanding of it, or a deeper understanding of it beyond its actual mechanical presentation, and deeper into some core kind of spinal element that really ties it together in a very, like as if there was a central algorithm to it all, or
a
some
unified
central code.
field theory. That's what they're looking for, with a view to manipulate reality itself. Probably manipulate reality from the. Again, where does reality stem from? That's where we have to ask ourselves, or that's what we have to ask ourselves. Pardon. So if it stems simply from the mind, or it's already extant, beyond, or not the mind, rather, the spirit, the metaphysical spark, the first thought, right? Beyond the mind. Mind is merely the translationary mechanism for that. If they can, depending on if it comes from, the metaphysical spark, the spirits, the pretanoia, that element, that immaterial, ineffable element that provides us vitality, the true self, or if it's already extant within this void that we know as the cosmos. It's always been here. It's always been like this. Or if it's, of course, a combination of the two, which is what it seems to be, right? Then if you can control and understand the fundamentals of matter, existence, the cosmos, then that's almost like a gateway, a back door to understanding where that perhaps emanated from, right? So it's like climbing Jacob's ladder or building the Tower of Babel. You're constantly attempting to build a tower of understanding, a tower of knowledge that reaches up to the stars, right? Which is sort of a metaphor for reaching up to heaven itself, to the thalamus, and that which is beyond the mind. So if you understand where reality emanated from, you can perhaps quantify it, materialize it in the Ahrimanic conception. Thus, you can understand, you can dimensionalize it. If you can dimensionalize it, then you can control it. You take away the mystical element of it, which provides it a sort of a mystifying aura, a ward of protection around it from the prying eyes and the scheming machinations of course, the Ahrimanic, the Luciferic, the shadow elements of humanity.
We should give some thought to the idea that CERN is a shopfront and a cover operation for something that's hiding in northern Siberia or, the South Pole or something like that, that there's some other operation out there, that CERN is a kind of a magazine. I'm not saying it definitely is, but just to give some consideration to that idea and to the wider point that science is far more advanced and the technology is far more advanced, like light years advanced to what we currently have and know about. And an institution like CERN, for example, could be kind of fielded or rolled out as, the front for, in inverted commas, the cutting edge science, whereas in fact the real deal is hidden. Like if we're to follow what seems to be the fingerprint or the hallmark of these types of operations, things are hidden. Like today I was reading the Boaz and Yakim, the twin pillars, that there's a third pillar which is hidden. And that was the first time I heard that idea, but likewise, not saying it is, but is it not possible that, CERN is not CERN? In fact, it's a cover operation, or it's a front operation, or a shop front to hide other deeper facilities, and not just to pick on CERN, but places like HARP in Alaska. It's bouncing signals up into the ionosphere, and is rumored to be linked to weather modification, etc. That these are the scientific temples, if you will, the temples of modernity. Places like HARP and CERN, but they may not be the real places. The real, who knows what's hidden, and what's dressed up as a power station or is dressed up as something more benign. Could actually be a huge operation that we don't know about, that we've never heard about. So, and the wider point that what's presented to us may be a kind of hiding something else, essentially, or trying to divert our attention away from other forces.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is what you see within CERN, that facility near Geneva, Switzerland, is not entirely where the actual, the informational, the experiments, the informational acquisition is going on. The experiments, the analysis, all of that's probably being done in several facilities. But what CERN is a symbol.
Yeah.
It's the symbol for it. And there's
Right.
also there's a reason why it was put near Geneva, Switzerland as well, of course.
Yeah.
That's one of the sort of long-standing traditional areas where the Radonites were, that merchant class. They were within that Rhone Valley, which, of course, Geneva, Switzerland is at the sort of mouth of. So yeah, certainly, it's what you say is true. Yeah.
I'm just
Also,
speaking of electrical power, I'm just boiling the kettle here, making a cup of tea.
also as well, CERN is a. It's not just that facility in Geneva, Switzerland. It itself is I believe it's an aerospace, and actually, I'll get there's an acronym to it, but it's a type of organization. I'm unsure who. Yeah, it's the European Organization for Nuclear Research. Yeah.
A Hadron Collider? Do I remember that term from somewhere?
That's the facility in CERN, yeah. That's the Hadron Collider, yeah.
Hadron Collider? Okay. And what are we colliding? With what?
Subatomic particles, exotic particles, gluons, and essentially everything from there up. That is what's been. Gluons are sort of theoretical particles, I believe, that they believe provide cohesion to the structure of the universe. They're almost like a particle adhesive, which keeps all matter whole, if you will.
Right. Well, let's just hope they don't hit the wrong button down there.
Let's hope, yeah.
But it brings like the point that the scientific class and the priest, the scientist priest, like you can imagine you and I are at the cutting edge of some bizarre kind of technological experiment, like, and we happen across something, and we happen across something big, like that's never been seen before. We discover something that's at the core of nature, a kind of a secret, something that was hidden or never was understood, and suddenly we discover it, and it has the power to change things drastically, like possibly for mankind, for whatever. So like you can see where science itself, or the scientist, or the alchemist scientist, he's an entity that must be controlled, he or she. They must be kept under, like, the power structure must keep a very close eye on them, and sort of must own them, really. Because what happens if somebody discovers something and sort of runs rogue, like rogue elements, that they're like, they have to be sort of monitored. Or perhaps all that is known is already known, and it's by a cast of people, and it's leaked drip, drip, drip into the scientific community. So the scientific community is made to look like the purveyors of what is found out, but in actual fact, they're just been leaked through the faculty, through the the organization just drip feeds them little bits at a time and lets them move ahead millimeter by millimeter and gives them the impression that it's them that have found things out, but they've been kind of breadcrumbed into the new discovery by some cabal or hidden entity, But,
I think a lot of what they're doing it's already been done before. I think this is them taking the philosophy and the technique, for example, the sigils and all of this, what were sort of disguised or concealed technical knowledge, concealed within the vestments of philosophy, and they're actually putting them into practical effect. I think they attempted this in perhaps a precursor civilization. It failed. Everything that they're doing now, and it failed. This is another attempt at it. It's
what you like, the insinuation is the caste or the central caste within that pre-civilization power structure still existed and held the information, and it maintained itself somehow through the eons, through the ages.
You can see that with for example, the Hermetic philosophy, where again you have Hermes or Thoth, Trismegistus, thrice great.
Yeah,
those same ideas that sort of wrapped up in his mythology, where he is believed to have stemmed from Atlantis. He was a refugee from Atlantis.
Right.
He brought, or the precursor civilization, he brought that information with him. He brought that technical know-how with him. But of course, he went to, as the story goes, he went to the Black Land, Kemet, and there was barbarians, and they didn't understand the technical knowledge, so therefore he had to conceal it in philosophical terms and mystical terms to such, until such a point where the barbarians were learned enough to thus reapply that knowledge in a technical or practical manner.
That their society would not have been able to deal with the information.
No,
they wouldn't have been wise enough to apply it, sort of thing.
Well, it's even like our own civilization, the psychic leap they would have to make, and of course the negative effects, the negative social ramifications it would have upon the various institutions of society, namely the family, as we see in our own civilization, would be too much for them to bear. And of course, they may take vengeance. They may take vengeance upon Hermes or Thoth or whatever his name was. Another term is Cadmus. That's from the Hellenic civilization. So, yeah.
And back to this idea of electricity, like if the human brain, for example, is, has electrical components, if you will, at the level of the synapse or nerve endings in the brain, like if it has observable sort of electromagnetic processes happening in the tissue, and as I said, the synapse, or do you think it's possible to literally affect the human mind, brain, shall we say, from without? Do you think that is a possibility?
I think it is a possibility. Yes, I think it's, of course, easier to maintain control over a biodigital network through implantation. The implantation will always create a better and more resilient interface with the biological system, as opposed to, say, just doing it through, the idea of voice of God weaponry and things like, through just frequency affecting the frequency, the electromagnetic, the electromagnetic frequency of the the human or whatever it may be, whatever the target may be. But yes,
like it seems you would need an extremely complex, like if you were trying to affect signals in the brain from without, that you'd need a very complex machine to do that, really. Like, to, things like thought, human thought, or, what do you think about Toyota cars versus Ford cars? Like, if you had to, or a given thought, a given simple everyday thought, I find it hard to imagine that you could sort of influence or implant an idea in the mind. It sounds to me almost too, like, not from the direct use of a frequency-based system. It seems to me to be a little bit far out there, the idea of that, but perhaps I'm wrong. Because the complexity of what will be involved in that, but I'm not sure. Maybe I'm underestimating what's available out there, technology-wise. What do you think?
There was a paper released in September 1975 by the Defense Intelligence Agency. This is out of the USA. I believe this is actually a redundant agency. It was merged with a few others, I think. However, it's called, the title is Controlled Offensive Behavior USSR bracket U close bracket, prepared by the US Army Office of the Surgeon General Medical Intelligence Office. This is taken from declassified information on the CIA's database. So you can only imagine what is still classified. So September 1975, in the section Part 5 conclusions, it states, second paragraph, Soviet and Czech psychotronic is essentially doing this, using frequency to influence human subjects. Psychotronic research will eventually be applied to human problems. As this occurs, the question will arise whether this knowledge and the equipment developed will be used for the enhancement of human freedom and social development, or for regimentation and enslavement. Psychotronics could conceivably play a role in contributing to the survival of the human species by emphasizing the interconnections between all living beings. This is the same idea in Masonry, the brotherhood of man. It should help to reduce human aggressive tendencies. By the same token, it could also be applied to increase such aggressive tendencies, and it has powerful potential for use as an effective weapon against groups of men and key leaders. It goes on, but essentially it names Robert Pavlita's work with psychotronic generators as possibly the most important contemporary development in the field of parapsychology, and as a major contribution to the deeper understanding, mastery, and utilization of biological energy for human advantage. Just as in the example of direct transfer of biological energy for medical purposes, and then it goes on, the use of, and then the rest is redacted, the use of such devices is not redacted. So it seems like there's something to it. And it also mentions as well within, so this is from the Nanopatch video that I did. This is a company called Vaxis, and I believe Kendall is his name. Forget the first name. His first name, pardon. Mark Kendall. He's a WEF contributor, developer of the Nanopatch, Australian, sort of illustrious academic career as well. So this is specifically patent number 201-801-61050. Within it, you have method of delivering material or stimulus to a biological subject, 202-100-770-19, that patent number. A system for determining fluid level in a biological subject. I won't mention the patents anymore, but microprojection arrays with enhanced skin-penetrating properties and methods thereof. Actuator system, that's actually, and providing the stimulus, if you will, translating the energy into either kinetic or electrical energy to provide that stimulus to the biological subject. Analyte detection system, measurement system. The measurement system itself is it's what the cyberneticists were calling the sense organ, the artificial sense organ, the sensory apparatus of the device. So yeah, I mean, it's all there. And of course, this interfaces with, it's compatible, and it interfaces with Luciferase technology as well, which acts on similar principles. So yeah, I personally think it will be a biodigital implantation of something, whatever that may be.
Yeah, but like this, from my understanding of this technology, like when you say a biodigital implant, like from what I understand, it's possible now to manipulate and utilize existing elements within the human body that are already present within your body, and energize them or stimulate them or engineer them to, work to your own design from without. So, for example, the processes that might, how protein or various biological systems move around your body to carry information from A to B, or to carry blood cells or oxygen or whatever it is, that all of these systems have an electromagnetic and electrochemical kind of fingerprint and hallmark, and they have a way of operating that can be read from without and can be manipulated from without. So, like, you may not even perhaps need the sensor. You can build the machine in the body. You can build a nano machine in the body using the existing biological components, perhaps backed up by other materials that can be deposited in the environment. And this is into our ideas with these heavy metals being deposited in the air, in dust, in the food supply, in the soil, in water. So all this stuff's around. So, like, I suppose if the assembly line in the past was designing kind of microchips and semiconductors, at some point somebody said, well, we don't need to do this on a circuit board. We can use charged particles and or biological particles and agents, and we can create the same types of systems in biological environment. And eventually they kind of realize, well, we can do it in the human body, in fluid and microfluidics, and these, the terminology around this stuff is
smart dust and such.
Smart dust and this kind. And
this is the digital terraforming of the planet, essentially. This is exactly what they're doing. And of course, you had as well, just recently, of course, very conveniently, it coincides with the advent of the smart dust. You have what they call Saharan desert sandstorms and such, and sand being blown over onto, well, for example, we had it here in Britain, this Saharan sand that just, was, you can see it on the cars as well. Funnily enough, when they're spraying, sometimes you see that residue on cars, and in localized areas. This is the same idea. It goes into the groundwater and then things such as that. It goes into the soil. It goes on the foods. So in any way that they can, they're attempting to infiltrate not just the environment, but also by infiltrating the environment, they consequently can infiltrate the biological system.
Yeah.
I tend to think it less. I still think them penetrating intravenously, either subdermally or just directly into the veins through syringe, hypodermic needle. I think that's still the the most effective way
Yeah.
of infiltrating the body of whatever this may be. But yeah, you're correct.
Which brings me to a question I wanted to ask you a little bit earlier there. So, like a couple of years after the event, with the benefit of hindsight and the information and time to digest what happened, what now is your kind of opinion on what was the vaccine? What actually was it, do you think?
So I think it was several things. I don't think it was just one thing. What was it to impose a sort of artificial genetic bottleneck? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can see that now with the cancer rates skyrocketing, excess deaths skyrocketing. You know, I personally know a lot of people that have died suddenly. And I put it down to that, of course, right? However, I also think there's something to it regarding these towers and what they were putting up. While we were all in a under global house arrest. And I think they're digitally terraforming the environment. Because remember, the Internet of all things, as Harari states, it's not just to become a platform by which just humanity will be merged to it and then inventorized and digitally surveilled through it. It's also something where the entire planet, every element of the planet will be inventorized digitally and merged to it. So therefore, like they have been digitally terraforming the planet, essentially they were digitally terraforming through that period our own biological landscape, our own biological environment, our own biological system. And also as well, you had the psychological reasons for it, to bring us further into this regimented way of being. And it further atomized people. You can see that very, very prominently. Yeah, absolutely. Within East Asia, they took that really, really quite seriously. They took that quite hard. There's a lot of, it's further accelerated the atomization there. That further accelerates demographic decline as well, by the way. So all of these things are sort of downstream from their agenda. They all work. They all feed into each other, So yeah, it's multiple things. I think those are the three main things. Inducing an artificial genetic bottleneck and killing off a certain number. Ensuring that, probably cause sterility as well. Ensuring that the human system was biodigitally terraformed and colonized, essentially. And then thirdly, human regimentation and psychological adaptation within the human host. That's it. I think those were the three main reasons for it. And of course, the war that's coming is going to be probably something similar along those lines. It's always
talk to me about this war.
Well, this war of all against all, this new World War III. However they initiate it, it may be initiated on multiple fronts. They're already opening up several theatres, potential theatres for bringing both West and East into a maelstrom from which they can't escape until they mutually annihilate themselves. I think that it's the same reasons for it. Human regimentation, the terraforming, the digital terraforming of society and humanity, that will come on the back of that through a war. They may use the war as an excuse, either to further needlecraft people, to digitally transubstantiate them, or to simply erect more infrastructure, which they will conceal or excuse vis-a-vis, well, it's greater telecommunication at this time of, national crises, right? And obviously, as well, it gets rid of a lot of the useless classes, they call them. So,
and increase surveillance to monitor the terrorists in your neighborhood.
The spies as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we all have to take this microchip because, it will insulate us against potential espionage and subterfuge against the nation. Things like that.
Well, like, there's an ongoing kind of a thing where, like, the question I want to ask is, at the end of the day, right, what have they got up their sleeve? Like, when you really boil it down, what have they got up their sleeve? And like, that's why I think this question about biodigital convergence, what technology have they got? And or something like CERN, what are they heading into? Like, what's the hard, tangible, the nuts and bolts of what they have? Because there's no smoke without fire, like, and we're seeing an awful lot of smoke. But like, in my kind of gut tells me that a lot of the smoke is to divert attention away from what they actually have up their sleeve, because they need the element of surprise, or they need to hoodwink or kind of, move the masses slowly toward where they want them to be, because they don't want to kind of startle them or frighten them or trigger them, or kind of, they need them sleepwalking into this new reality. Like, so to me, like, when, like, for example, I was listening to Israel Diego on YouTube recently, just today and the last couple of days, and he's been, he talks about iPad Go 2 and the signs and symbols, and the Trump stuff and Oasis and La Palma, and these signs of the coming deluge and the flood. And like, there's a part of my head that's gone, yeah, that's all very, very interesting, but I want to know, what have they got? And it's a similar thing with the World War III sort of narrative, Russia, Ukraine, NATO, what's China doing, what's happening over in the Black Sea, and what's kicking off in the Middle East with Israel, all this kind of caper. Like, it's like, fine, yeah, park that for a minute. What have they got? Like, what have they got? You know what I mean? It's like, we've had world wars in the past, but it seems that all of what's happening with these various circuses are I just have a sense they're designed to divert attention from what they actually have up their sleeve. And as you say, Ahriman and even a lot of the occult type narrative and occult kind of understanding is like I get it, and I understand how it underpins and is interlinked with the technology, and is a mirror, sort of as above, so below, with the technology. But at the same time, I think some of, it takes a little bit away from the concrete here and now of what have they got up their sleeve, if you know what I mean. Would you take that as a kind of a fair point, or?
Yeah, I mean, I accept that. Yeah, I accept that. I think it all boils down to, in its most simplest and fundamental sense, it is power and the perpetuation of power, and that's it. It's power. Yeah. It's its primary ideology, like the cancer cell, and its primary ideology is the infinite growth of its own sense of self, of its own form. And power seeks to centralize all power unto itself. So that's what you will that is the path of least resistance for power.
But does it follow then that the individual then can only understand these times and this world in terms of power? That, for example, we should only evaluate it in terms of power. How can we take power from the power structure how can we empower ourselves? You know, that it becomes like a political wrestling match. And very, like, you know, when we enter into that way of understanding or thinking, and we very quickly lose sight of the fact that, you know, there's a vast wheel turning here, and there are natural forces at play over the millennia, over the eons, and we lose that philosophical wise viewpoint, and then we get embroiled into a kind of the immediate wrestling of existence here and now.
Mm-hmm.
Because when if you pardon the expression, when the shit hits the fan, like it, and it's time to move, it's, you know, it becomes a power struggle. And I just think it focuses the viewpoint in some way, but maybe it makes you necessarily, it destabilizes you or off balances you in a way, because you lose sight of that bigger picture, because you're the man on the spot in that time, thrust into that moment by fate, providence, the hand of providence that made you there. You know, even this conversation we're having now, which brings me, I suppose, to a wider question: is there room still for the individual to assert his or herself, or evade any of this stuff, or are we just at the mercy of these tidal historic, these forces?
I see that this gets to the definition of what is power, because power essentially is the controlling of one's fellow man. The only way to control one's fellow man is to essentially domesticate his thinking, to domesticate his very psyche, to put him within a docile and disfigured state. So in that sense, if one even joins the maelstrom of power, this isn't even just surviving, which is, of course, you know, of the utmost concern and utility to us in this coming era of tumultuousness and you know, transitory change. But once one enters that ring of power, that arena, vying for power, they ultimately become that which they seek to fight against, I think.
Yeah.
So, again, that's the irony of history, where the freedom fighter may overthrow the tyrant. The rebel overthrows the tyrant only to become the tyrant himself, because the rebel has lofty ideals, and he believes he is not against the tyrant because he is opposed to the tyrant's methodologies, but he is against the tyrant because perhaps he doesn't have the power that the tyrant has and he craves it, or secondly, he believes that the tyrant is misusing that power and not pursuing what, again, the rebel may feel is just idealistic pursuits. So ultimately, the rebel becomes the tyrant. The tyrant, and then once the rebel becomes the tyrant, another rebel will take his place eventually and overthrow that once rebel, now tyrant. And, you know, it's the continuation of the cycle. I think nature is set up that way, that it puts things in front of us to psychically nudge us. Oh, I don't know if it's, you know, of course, there's no intention. There can't be any intention behind it, because nature itself is an abstraction, but we are nudged ourselves vis-a-vis our own sort of psychological state and our psychological, you know, the forces which impel us within our psychology. We're pushed in these various trends which are reciprocal, which maintain this sort of constant hamster wheel of tumultuousness or chaos, which again produces that entropy, which then produces the loosh, the energetic momentum which maintains the revolution of the wheel. it's stepping off the wheel, which is, I mean, vying for power it's a position which puts you firmly within the sort of revolving door of history. You have no agency within that, though it may feel as though you have agency when you have power, but you don't. You become a slave to it.
Yeah.
So I think getting off that hamster wheel, but yes, I do agree. We have to survive. The truth must survive. We must survive. But we have to do so on our own terms. We have to do so not by yearning for power, which is essentially the psychological disfigurement, or it begets the psychological disfigurement of our fellow man. We have to have firmly rooted in our mind the value of human existence, the value of the inherent, the innate value of humankind and sentience and thinking, free thinking, which of course puts us at odds with craving power, because you can't have power and also be a proponent of free thought. It's just.
But ironically, if you had those values and that, reverence for freedom, that ironically now you may find yourself in a position where you are willing to go to war to protect it, and
True.
by that act of war, you end up if you're successful, you find yourself in a position of power, as it were. So there's an ironic kind of
Yeah. These are the forces that are constantly nudging us. They're nudging us into the revolving door of history.
Yes.
The, rotational human farming, that idea. It's interesting when you look at history from that vantage point.
Yeah.
It's almost like where nature has a certain fail-safe, and it leads man in weird and wonderful directions. I say nature, I mean it of course it stems from our own psyche. Whatever compels us within our behavioural patterns nudges us in certain directions, but it gives us the illusion of free will. But we're only free to act within the will of whatever is compelling us within our behavioural patterns. I mean, that's the irony of it.
You use that term nature, but it brings me to another kind of deeper question, that there are forces, entities, energies in the world around us and in the universe that are beyond our understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Would you concur with that?
Yes, I would agree. I don't necessarily think there's any dimensionality to them. I'm starting to think that they're perhaps just archetypal entities, or there's something which they affect us in subtle ways. They're probably even beyond our own mind, our own psyche. There's something,
spirits.
Yeah, I mean, there's an immanence to them, but they're also external to us, if that makes sense. They affect us imminently and immediately, but I think Armin has the perfect terminology. Egregore. It's an egregore. It's an egregore of the mind. If it's again, it's like Plato's cave. It's the projections that are the shadow projections that are cast upon the cave wall. If we understand that the shadow itself require its prerequisite for existence is light, because light is the only thing which can cast a shadow. Of course, the refraction or obfuscation of light around an obstacle or an object is what provides the shadow any form or shape or tangibility, I guess. Then, if we understand the spirit to be the light, then the shadows themselves are the archetypes, the artificial personas, the artificial egos that are conjured within the mind. They are the demons, if you will, that we fight with constantly. They're the things that, seek to influence us in this way and that way, And a well-rounded individual is able to resist the urge to be influenced by these psychic forces. But yeah, I do agree. There are things beyond our comprehension. I mean, the way I'm describing it as well is probably not correct. I mean, they're that incomprehensible. But yeah, they do have influence upon us. I would say.
Where I go to work, there's a long road that stretches out into West Clare, a long straight road. And I know when you go out that road, like it's connected into the Irish famine. And I know in that area, a lot of people died, and there was a lot of people living on small farm holdings that were, tied in with the local landlord and the big house. And there was a lot of starvation in that area, like in the famine. And I get to a certain point then where I have to cross the estuary on a ferry. And when I'm on the ferry, I look out over the waters of the Shannon, and I get this very subtle feeling off those waters that I have to sort of concentrate to feel it. Like it's effervescent. I can sense it around me, but I'm not conscious of it unless I make myself tune into it and try and feel it. It's like a wispy, half-seen, smoky thing that's almost disappears as soon as you look at it. But if you tune yourself in, you can kind of sort of feel it in a very sensitive type way, just at the estuary. But also on the drive out on that long road, that road has a particular feeling, similar, effervescent, wispy, barely tangible feeling that is quite dark, and I connect it into that part of history. So these feelings are in these areas that are just, they're just out of reach of touch, and they're subterranean and, as I say, or effervescent. And when I get to my job, then where the power station is, the power station itself inside the station was built like 1969. And it's a behemoth. I've never seen anything as complex internally in terms of machines, pipeworks, panels. It's a vast structure inside. It could be 6 or 7 stories high with there's turbines, there's oil burners, but when I'm in there, what I notice is I get that same effervescent feeling of a sense of something in there, but it's quite dark, but not in an evil way, but quite kind of dark sense I get in there. And I had wondered when I asked you that question about electricity, I'm interested in this idea about artifacts around these forces. What's happening in the sidelines, in the shadows? Is there unpredictable stuff that are artifacts, like in the computer game? You have artifacts at the edge of the graphics sometimes that perhaps the computer programmer didn't quite intend, but it's whatever, a clash of graphics, or perhaps the viewer, it makes it looks strange. But like when I walk close by the power station, or even in the door for a look, and I see this obsolete equipment, and as I say, huge pipes and all sorts of heavily industrial components and machines, that I get this sense that when you generate that kind of current or power, you may open up some sort of a portal somewhere, and some sort of an energy bleeds in. Or like that long road that leads back into West Clare, when you have that many people who are starving, that something bleeds through that trauma into the landscape. Or perhaps when I crossed that estuary, perhaps it was a sacrificial place, or a place of harvest for fishing or whatever. Perhaps it was a place that was important to the Druids or the ancient cultures in Ireland, and I can kind of pick up on it, for a split second, like a very subtle thing. Now, when I say pick up, I don't mean I'm seeing anything. It's like extremely
No, it's like echoes. You can feel it.
like a distant echo that you actually have to get your head in the right space to sense it. consciously
I
sense it.
I felt it as well when I was those 12 o'clock hills. And I went all
Yeah.
about there, and I went into the it felt to me like very old. There was moss growing everywhere. It felt very like ancient woodlands, and it's very. There's something menacing about it. I don't know if it was I was on my own, and I'm
Yeah.
in a sort of strange land, or
Mm.
not so strange really. Felt very much like Scotland, but you could feel it as well. I was on the Famine Road. You could
Yeah.
feel that as well. There's a certain psycho-spiritual scar that's been almost cleaved into the very landscape of the place.
Into
And
the energy of the place, sort of.
yes, absolutely. I also felt it as well because you see a lot of the remnants of the culture that had passed, the pre-Christian culture.
Yeah.
And one could even say the Gaelic culture, as
Mm.
opposed to obviously now everyone mostly speaks English. And I feel the same thing as well in certain places in Scotland where there's standing stones. There's a certain mystical energy surrounding it. It's not like the stone itself is imbued with any energy at
Yeah.
all. It's more a symbol that, again, like what you're saying, you can tap into. There's a bubble in there within the field. And I don't get me wrong. I mean, these areas themselves are like the standing stone itself. It has no energy within the purely, the directly conscious. I mean those religions are now dead essentially, or they've been repurposed into the Christian religion or what have you, the elements of it.
But there's some sliver at the corner
Yeah,
of the stage where there's a gap where the curtain is letting in a
yeah,
tiny sliver of light, and you can sense that, and it's a gap into something else. Like another dimension or something in there. There's like the energy got sewn into the kind of space-time continuum, and it's kind of
yeah.
it's reverberating around these, like
But
as you say, around the standing stone or that long road or the estuary or in another way within the power station, within the mechanics and the hulking machinery. But likewise, perhaps all that's going on now that we've been speaking about on the call tonight has inserted a kind of an energy into this part of time that'll be stuck here. That'll be like, you'll have people coming back in 5,000 or 6,000 years from now, sort of visiting our area, or maybe that somehow they'll be able to pick up on what we're talking about now as us living in this time and dealing, trying to understand these forces and living with these forces around us, these like epochal shifts and energies and this technology and this power structure and this, how it's affecting everybody, that it leaves a mark somehow, like a resonance out through time, But I think that's quite an interesting thing.
I think this has something to do with the idea of Prometheus. So this
Yeah.
idea of the spark being provided to the living clay, if you will, that was humanity prior to it. It's looking out into the inanimate, and it's seeing almost. I don't think it's contained within the landscape. The landscape merely acts as a symbol that spurs on a psychic fire within us. Like what you're saying, the echoes of the past. It's the same idea as the Deus Ex Machina, a god from the machine. So it's like the nuclear power plant and everything surrounding it. All of the new scientific ideas, the way it views the world and attempts to materialize the world, and the superstition of materialism, essentially. I think this empirical superstition itself has created a religion which itself has established these places as energetic vortexes, essentially, like what you're stating. You feel it. You feel that sort of cold Ahrimanic thing, that energy there. And it's very similar as well to John Dee's ideas surrounding Choronzom, this the literal dweller of the abyss. And of course, Choronzom is potentially a compound in Enochian, which means the counting of generations. So you have this idea of time. It's a deity of time and things like that. So I think the abyss provides us, or these creatures of the abyss. And of course, the abyss is our own psyche, the recesses of our psyche, the cave, if you will. It projects out onto the world an ancient memory that's probably contained within our blood. And psychological scars that are passed on generationally, like an epigenetic memory. I think it projects that onto the landscape. And I think, for example, symbols like that famine road and such, and everything else that goes, all of the other geographical scars of the landscape, that it's all reflections, psychic reflections, which sort of spur on or produce a certain feeling within us, or a certain sense of, well, there's something else there, or perhaps we're projecting things like Ahriman, like an egregore, as Arman states. It's interesting. But yeah, I do think that's sort of all of that electricity. There probably is something going on there, all of the electricity it produces, all of that static, everything like that. Especially in a nuclear power plant, data center as well. It must establish a ghost within the machine, if you will.
But there's a kind of a strange thing here, like, because you're talking about something now that's very effervescent, actually kind of difficult to understand or even verbalize. But in essence, it's something far more. It is the hyper real, because it is the most real experience, perhaps, because it's where consciousness crosses over into spirit and interacts with matter. So you kind of only ever get it on a kind of a taste, a kind of a scent in the air that it's like a dream you kind of half remember, and you wake up and you want to remember it, but you kind of can't remember because it's just out of reach, and you're like, oh, what was it again? And it's like this sensibility is just out of reach, but these resonances are very profound experiences for us on a very deep level. And I think there's something in that with regard to what we're seeing now, this massive machine that's generating this new reality, that's propelling, that it is leaving a resonance and a kind of a mark in the ether, like it's opened a gap in the ether, and it's something is coming in a sense, that we can feel. But it's also somehow, I think, to conceive of it in that way somehow gives us a kind of a control back over it. Because I think that's maybe where we need to start in maybe in a way, think of it in that kind of metaphysical, in those metaphysical terms, because that's where perhaps we can take some power back. We have to understand it as best we can at its deepest level. Because if we do, then it sort of ends up, we can do a chaos magic thing on it where it kind of ends up empowering us, perhaps, in a way.
Yes.
Because we've sort of parked it, but we've also put it into its place in history, in space and time. And we said to it, you belong there. You're just another rock in the garden, or another aspect of space-time, or of existence, or history, or the movement of things. And we understand you in your place. because we're bigger than space time. You know, you have to kind of trip into your own spirit to get that viewpoint. You have to understand yourself to be, as we said in previous conversations, a fractal of the divine, of the infinite. And once you take that, sit on that shelf and look from that point of view, you see it then in that sense. So that makes you the sorcerer in that moment. Like,
I think you've touched upon something that's very profound. Being the sorcerer in that sense is far more powerful than being the king. You wield the power without actually directly touching the power, if that makes sense. The power is a corrosive thing. It is the literal nexus point of entropy. And the advisor, the priest class, those who are behind the curtain, who in charge, the political salesman or the kings, the kingly class, with projecting forth their power through a mask, they are the true ones who wield the power. And it's better to be that archetype, the archetype of the hermit or the sorcerer, as you mentioned, than the king. But I want to mention as well that I think I think this is exactly what Ahriman seeks to abolish. What you just mentioned there, where consciousness drifts into the spiritual. And that is ultimately what we're waging war against. It's not necessarily for power. It's actually to remain human.
Yeah.
So it's a battle for our very humanity.
Yeah.
And what it is to be human cannot be quantified. It can't be materialized. It can't be measured. To do so, as they have sought to do through the likes of psychiatry, even psychology, it robs humanity of all of its metaphysical wealth, all of its metaphysical value. And thus you have to condense it because you're attempting to comprehend and measure, quantify something which is largely, uncategorizable. It's beyond the realms of liminal understanding.
And but that is conversely the very spirit of the age that will to categorize and measure and render to zeros and ones and pixels.
It's the Faustian spirit, and it's like Faust. It will always reach the crescendo of its own self-destruction. It has to. It has to. People, I had a comment. I don't know if he was. Well, it was a sort of roundabout way, but I think he was stating that the managerialist system, it seems so powerful. How can it collapse? And this is why. This is how it collapses. It collapses because of its very nature. They're attempting to quantify and measure, materialize that which is beyond quantification, materialization, measurement.
Yeah.
So they condense everything down into a very, they're control freaks, they're anal retentives. So
it's a race toward its own implosion.
Yes, pretty much. While at the same time they hopped up in their own hubris, in their own success up to this point, they believe they're sophisticated. They're at the peak, the pinnacle of progress. They don't understand what's going on. They see the light through the tunnel, and they think it's. They rush towards it, thinking it's salvation through the technological savior. when actually it's just a train hurtling towards them. You know, it's that sort of fanatical religious zealotry that we're dealing with. But it has to. You can't rationalize with something like that. You have to just allow for it to correct itself through its own self-destruction. You have to allow for it to make its own, create its own pitfalls, essentially. It has to learn from its own lessons or simply just destroy itself and take itself off the chessboard. So.
But I wind up with this kind of an idea, but I go for a little wander in the power station, and the power station is largely defunct. It's not in an operational state. But I sort of, there's a door open, and I kind of sneak in this side door, and there's nobody in there. It's a huge facility. And I wander in there, and what I found is that I found myself becoming a little bit territorial about this area, and I found myself becoming just a little bit secretive about it. Like, I want it to be something I can sneak in there, and it's just my space. And when I investigate it in there, it kind of draws me into something, and I can't really explain it. And when I come out of there, it takes me a while to kind of shake off whatever energy has attached itself to me. So I know that might sound a bit strange, but it's kind of like maybe I can relate it to what this power structure has found, that it's drawn them into something sort of a secretive, dark love affair. That they've begun an embrace with something and a waltz with something that is kind of a strange intoxication and a type of an addiction that's ultimately destructive, but they can't see it because it somehow has enchanted them in a way and kind of twined them in its arms. So, as you say, perhaps there's wider forces at play, nature's way of keeping things straight, burning off the impurities, but there are unusual forces like that. Like, as I go back to that example of myself, when I'm in that space, I don't want anyone to know I'm in there. And there's a little bit of me that never wants to leave. I don't know, it's like I find a portal into some other space, and it's like a meditation. It's its own meditation, and it's its own scrying mirror. And I talk to that spirit, really, I suppose, and it talks to me, and it's a kind of a thing I couldn't explain it, perhaps only to a psychiatrist. Somebody, if I was sitting on a couch, they might analyze my mind and tell me, look, this relates to your father, your mother, or something, or to your quest to find spiritual whatever, it's something like that's what I mean by other forces and things we don't fully understand at play,
Yeah. I think as well. Oh, you go, man. Sorry.
Well, like maybe the scientists in CERN might discover it, but maybe a poet might discover it.
Yeah.
Or maybe somebody who'd had a great heartbreak in their life might discover it, or maybe somebody in love might discover it. There's various different windows into the kind of unknown, into the kind of where the mind and the spirit can travel and leap through the dimensions into the ether and get lost and kind of find the center of the self and the center of the universe, or find or lose God, or create or destroy God, or become God, or this. It's like there's other things behind that door. Like, I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, absolutely. I think they've become infatuated with the spectre of their own success. So I agree that See, that's the power of the scrying mirror. It's not that it is a portal. The portal itself is a mirror. I think it's a mirror which reflects back at us, or provides us the opportunity to reflect back upon ourselves, to contemplate our own, or to be alone with our own thoughts is a better way of describing it. And once we're alone with who we are, in deep, almost meditative silence, and all our focus is drawn to the abyss. Like Koronzom, that dweller of the abyss, the psyche itself, once it dwells in that, it begins to conjure forms like almost a prisoner's cinema. And the forms that it conjures begin to become more and more real. The more that we isolate ourselves within that, the confines of that black monolith, and all potentiality is then cast to that void in a sort of psychic transmutation. I think that's exactly what they've I think that describes hubris, if you will. You know, once you're isolated, like what you're mentioning, you want to be isolated. Because I know from my own experience, I prefer being alone with my own thoughts than I do with, conversing with a large group of other people. There's something, deeply serene, tranquil, even about it. There's an equanimity to be found within the deep and vast abode of silence and profundity. And of course, I think that's why people go to outside into nature as well. They try to find that same serenity, to capture it. And I think it's something to do with an echoing of us seeking after the true state of what God is, the first principle, the first, the prima state. I think I think there's an intoxication to be had there, like what you're saying. And I think that's exactly what's happened to them. But the problem is, when you dwell in that for too long and you're not grounded and you're, again, isolated, things come out of that abyss, man, that will literally capture you. It will eat you whole. It will capture your psyche. And before you know it, you're a slave to the establishment of a machine which will digitize or, electronically or electromagnetically manifest something that has latched onto you like some sort of psychic parasite, and it seeks for you to make a home for it in this world, a vessel for it in this world.
Possession,
yeah.
But it's such it's a fine line then between like possession and enlightenment. Like, it's like that heady, you spin the coin, you're going to end up at one or the other. It's kind of like your spirit is up for grabs or is up to be released and free. And it's like that whole realm of where those things occur is, I think it's active now, very active, isn't it? In this reality, at this time. So.
Oh yeah, certainly. Oh, it's extremely active, yeah.
Anyway, man, I think I'm gonna start to wind down here tonight now, maybe.
Yeah, me too, man.
Good chat, man.
It was a great chat. I'll probably upload this one. That was very good indeed.
Yeah, there's a lot in it. It's like trying to take the temperature of the time you're in. Sometimes you can't. I can't sometimes because I'm, you just can't because it's too much and you're too busy and you're working and you can't kind of, you don't have a handle on it yourself. but then sometimes a moment comes where you go, okay, you know what I mean?
It's like jamming, man.
Yeah, exactly. I sometimes think it's good like that, wander off into the shadows a bit and see what comes. Stuff you can find stuff there that's becomes more meaningful than what you think, if you know what I mean. Or
Exactly.
it gives sense to things.
Yeah, that's why I like these discussions. Yeah, absolutely.